Hi, I'm Grimm, and this is Deep Work Fast. Every week for 20 minutes or less on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, I bring you tools, ideas, and resources to help you be your best self at home and at work as quickly as possible. Deep Work Fast. And this week, I'm continuing the conversation from our recent blog, Navigating the Depths of Grief, Overcoming Personal and Professional Loss. And I'm making this a series because it's a heavy topic, and depending on the kind of loss that you're experiencing, most likely it has layers. And if you want to move through the heaviest, most intense feelings around that, it's going to take us more than just a 20-minute session to do that. And there's a lot of tools and ideas I wanted to bring to you. Last week, I introduced everyone to a classic tool by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who has passed away, but her tools are still very relevant and available on their website. We'll put it in the link below just in case you missed last week. I highly recommend that you watch the replay so that you can listen to the 5 stages of grief. And I explained how they manifest differently when we lose people versus losing your job. Still a grief process, still loss, of course, a little bit different because the intensity level when we lose the people. I don't want to discount that and minimize that it is different. But when people do lose their jobs, specifically when you get laid off or fired unexpectedly, like you're not planning the change, there's identity loss there. And it can feel like what's called an ego death. So if you haven't watched that, I would highly recommend that you do, maybe right after today. Today I want to talk about 2 other things that are also in the blog, but I'm going to kind of walk you through it really quickly. Ways that you can help yourself move forward. I call them accelerators because in coaching people for 28 years, when I brought them these tools, it has helped them shift their thinking faster, maybe not get stuck in those moments where you can get hopeless or feel helpless, feel despair and depression. All those things are fairly normal when we are processing a loss. And like I said, when you weren't expecting it, sometimes the stages we go through move slower. And if you're experiencing a lot of change at the same time, which for some reason a lot of people seem to be experiencing a lot of change right now, that makes it a little worse, right? Because your body, your mind, your soul, all of it gets fatigued. And if you layer on all of these changes at work, changes at home, just general changes in the world or things that feel traumatic, like war, for instance, that can slow us down because you can only process and move through and heal certain things that you just can't. You got work to do, you got life on top of it, so you can't always spend the time processing things. And subconsciously, even though we're often processing, some things have to come into our consciousness for us to move past them. And so what I want to introduce you to today are 2 ideas for you to think about, and then some tools to help you. One is learning to honor the memories of whatever it is that you've lost. Now, if you're still in shock or denial or anger, this might feel impractical to you. And I would just say that if you can find some moments, because you're probably thinking about it anyway, or the person, if that is who you've lost, or if you've lost a job, or maybe if your whole company unfortunately went out of business. We're thinking about it, right? We are thinking about what shoulda, coulda, would have happened. We're rethinking situations. And so honoring those memories, to me, has 2 pieces that help people move forward. One is honoring those positive memories in a way that you can capture them. Sometimes that is, talking it through with other people. But I like people to make, some kind of journal, or, you could even record a video like I'm doing. And I know that sounds silly, but now on your phone, you could do that by capturing those memories whenever you're thinking about them. Allows you to have those available whenever the bad stuff creeps in. Because when I say honoring the memories, part of moving forward is also living with the reality of things that don't feel great, but happened anyway. Getting real with those things, moving past our kind of natural delusion and sometimes our denial, that phase makes us skip some parts of the reality that we don't want to remember, that maybe we blocked out. So I want to talk about job loss right now because people that I coach, because I coach people in corporate environments, and I've known a lot of people who have been laid off, been fired, and actually some people who retired or changed jobs where they were the person making at least part of the choice and still had grief and loss after, because their job was a big part of their identity. And I just want to tell you that that happens and it's normal. And sometimes people don't realize that that happens sometimes when people retire and they're the person who made the choice. So note that for yourself and other people. And back to my suggestion for you here is capturing those memories, understanding the memories, really capturing the positive ones in a way that you can revisit those later. Not just your memory, because unfortunately for some of us, our memory is going to fade. We won't be able to remember them later. So making sure that you have keepsakes, or like I said, you could even record an audio or a video, remembering the good stuff, the good people, the things that were important to you. If you have a lifelong career in a certain industry, you want to capture that. You want to be able to talk about it with your people as you continue to age. And yes, you're aging. Me too. And when we're connecting with people in our network over time. And like I said, you also want to get super real about the stories that you're holding on to that aren't that great. And so in coaching, the tool that I use for that is sometimes just reframing. And reframing does not mean making up a fantasy. Reframing means making sure that you can see that old situation from different vantage points, and then choosing the vantage point that is the most healthy for you to move forward. I'm going to give you an example of that. And if you need help, I'll be happy to. Just reach out, right? So a reframe might be if the person is upset and is spending a lot of time and energy, for instance, trying to find out who made the decision to fire him or her. I've had this happen in real life, so stick with me on this. It's real. Right? So the person's really angry. They've been fired from their job and they still are socializing and spending time with a whole bunch of people who still work in that company. And part of that gossipy energy and process is this person reliving all the bad stuff and spending a lot of time kind of Sherlock Holmesing to find out who, what, and how. That's unhealthy. It also keeps you stuck, specifically in the stages of grief, one of which is anger, and another one is bargaining. And the bargaining usually doesn't get us anywhere. It's us trying to make sense of stuff that doesn't feel good on the inside. And so the reframe here, if I'm coaching that person, is to say, okay, let's decide where we're going to settle in this story. If we just went to neutrality, how can we take the sting out of this situation and start to reframe your thoughts? We're not changing the story. I'm not trying to change reality or pretend like something didn't happen. So reframing is just you getting yourself clear and clean and neutral so you can move forward. So with that person, we ended up talking about, let's get out all the stuff that you're upset about on a sheet of paper. Let's start thinking about what we know for sure, and let's take away all the things that are made up. We all make stuff up, everybody. In fact, I've done another one of these, I think I did, called MSU, Make Stuff Up. We're all graduates of Make Stuff Up. And when bad things happen, because stuff that feels bad on the inside, our brain and our psyche wants to help us. And so oftentimes we stay away from the things that feel the worst. And sometimes reality is what feels the worst. But if we don't stick to reality or something neutral to generally positive, you're going to get stuck in this spiral. And then you get stuck in the stages of grief and you end up staying there a long time, probably longer than you want to stay there or is productive for you. And I will say this reframing process of trying to get to a neutral energy around that experience, sometimes you have to forgive yourself and other people for mistakes that were made. Sometimes you have to actually, on the inside, you may never have a conversation with the person who fired you, but you don't want to carry that energy into your next job. And I promise, because I've interviewed people before, when somebody comes in and they're angry and they're bitter and they're stuck, everybody interviewing knows. Even if the words that you're using are happy and nice and you're trying to be excited, you're trying to present another thing, if you're carrying anger and resentment and grief and depression, it comes out. It's in your vibe. And so I don't want to dishonor the experience. I want to create space, and I want you to create space for yourself to get the story out. And like I said, let's forgive, let's reframe by shifting the parts of the story that are untrue, or you'll never know if they're true or not. Let me say that again. Back to the example I was saying with that person, I had to help her see that she might never know the truth. And that staying Sherlock Holmes and trying to identify a bad guy in this story so that she could blame it on someone and get all that yuck out that she was feeling, all that anger and all the negotiation and bargaining of trying to figure out who could possibly have made that decision and why they would ever make that decision, I had to show her that all the energy she was using doing that was keeping her from shifting that into neutral to more positive energy so she could move forward towards something else. And so it took us a few sessions. So you can't do this usually in 10 minutes, by the way. If that's you and you have memories that feel bad or thoughts that are highly negative, it's going to take a little bit for you to get to neutrality. The last suggestion I have for you is to find someone objective to talk to. I mentioned in the story, I mentioned in last week's video, one of the things that keeps people stuck and in this cycle is socializing with people who aren't objective. I want to just say to you, that means you might have to talk to a coach or a therapist, someone who has no stake in the game. Your spouse might not be able to be objective. The people who are still working at the company or other people who got laid off probably also cannot be objective. So they're not going to help you get to more neutral, reframed thinking so that you can move forward. So I want you to be super careful about how you're talking about whatever you're talking about related to this loss. What stories are you telling over and over again? And if they are highly negative, I'd love for you to stop doing that. Find one or two safe people who can be objective, who aren't going to add to that energy. And they're not going to like misery loves company with you, which is stay in it for a really long time. And then you leave and you feel worse than you did before. We don't want that. That is not moving yourself forward. So if you haven't read the blog, I highly recommend that you do. Grab it. I have some other things in there that aren't really easy for me to describe to you in Deep Work Fast like this, but when you read about them, and I actually put questions in there for you to use for self-reflection, so that if you're going to take my advice and you want to neutralize some of these stories, those questions are built into the blog. You can use it like a worksheet, just print it out or just put it on your phone or your computer so that you can look at it when you have private time and are feeling, when you're sober, by the way, and you're feeling like you can process through this in a way that your goal is not to suffer anymore. Your goal is to get unstuck, and your goal is to get neutral and as positive as we possibly can so that you can move yourself forward. I'm going to do more on this next week. I know that this is a big topic. Thank you to all of you who have been reaching out. I'm sorry to all of you who have had major loss. And like I said, the loss of a loved one, For some people, that never goes away. And I want to honor that, and I want to recognize that. But for those of you who are suffering loss related to a job, we can get over this. It doesn't have to last for the rest of your life. You don't have to be bitter. You don't have to be resentful. And you also don't have to feel insecure about it. So we're here to help you. I want you to be your best at home and at work. And I know this is a tough topic. If it's yours, please don't hesitate to reach out for help.